Welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. Today we begin in North Africa, where Moroccan authorities battle to put out multiple wildfires burning through forests in 4 provinces in the north amid a heat wave. Hundreds of families have been evacuated as a precaution from the Taza province, and transport in the areas has been disrupted. No casualties have been reported so far. Firefighters, soldiers and police officers have been trying to prevent the fires from causing more destruction, but strong winds, the forest density and a difficult terrain have slowed the efforts. The country, which has had intense drought, has recently been hit by soaring temperatures. The fire has reportedly burnt at least 2,500 acres of forest so far in Larachi and Uzani areas. A night curfew has been imposed in Gambela city in western Ethiopia as part of efforts to control illegal activities. The city was last month a scene of violent confrontations between the government and 2 armed groups. The groups, the Oromo Liberation Army and the Gambela Liberation Front, controlled parts of the city for hours at the time in what the former called a joint operation. Government forces managed to regain control of the city after intense fighting, with reports indicating at least 40 people killed. While officials say calm has returned to the city in the week since, the curfew is an indication that things are still volatile. The move prohibits any movement of individuals and vehicles between 8 p.m. and 5:30 local time, except for security forces and ambulances. A night curfew was imposed in another major city in western Ethiopia, Asosa, the capital of Benishangul Gumuz region, earlier this month. French President Emmanuel Macron says he wants a rethink of French military postures in Africa. Mr. Macron made the comments during an address to French troops, where he added that he had asked his ministers and army chiefs to work on it. But Macron's comments come ahead of a visit by French officials to Niger Republic, which is expected to redefine the country's strategy to fight Islamist militants in the Sahel. Concerns have been growing about the withdrawal of some 2,400 French troops from Mali, the epicenter of violence in the Sahel region. It has sparked fears of worsening violence, destabilizing neighbors, and spurring migration. The withdrawal is expected to be completed by the end of the summer. French officials have pledged they would continue to help West African armies fight insurgent groups. Well, security expert Temitope Olodo joins us now for more on this issue. Welcome to Network Africa.
Thank you so much for having me.
So French President Emmanuel Macron wants to rethink his military postures here in Africa. What are your thoughts about this latest move?
More or less like a deja vu, if I could say that, similar to what the Americans did, in Afghanistan, where they removed their troops, and we saw what happened suddenly, within that country. Fortunately, we have roughly close to 5,000, French troops across Africa. And if they are rethinking their strategy with the removal of about 2,400 troops from Mali, the question is who will fit into their shoes. And what they're saying now is that they are relying on regional partners to take over, that kind of big, gap that they will be leaving. Because it's not just about the troops that will be leaving, it's about the equipment which are involved. It's about the strategic information that is gathered, how intelligence is gathered. We've seen what happens in countries like Nigeria, Niger, Chad, where they've been on their own dealing with this. And we found out that the best way to deal with this kind of insurgency that's happening across the Sahel is to have a more of a regional cooperation. But to expect one regional body or country to actually take over the shoes of what the French are leaving behind is going to be a long call. And I don't see how they're going to be able to do it. Who are you going to call upon? Nigeria? Or is it Ghana? Or which country are you going to call upon to do that work? It's going to be a big loss.
Right. So, Temitope, why now? Why do you think the French president is doing this at this time. Do you think it's a good move?
Personally, I don't think it's a good move, but if you look at the trouble that he has at home, there's no doubt in my mind that there is a political calculation that is going on here. French have lost about 53 troops or soldiers, in this war in Africa. And the question is, what are they getting out of it? Millions have been spent, in terms of equipment that have been brought into the Sahel to deal with this. And we know from intelligence reports that have been put in place that Africa is actually becoming the bedrock of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and all those very dangerous organizations. And even at home in Nigeria, we know how this group have been, changing their structures and changing the way in which they carry out their operations, from moving from Boko Haram in Far East to becoming hybrid bandits, in the southwest and southeast, causing all kind of havoc. So what is going to happen? Only God knows. But I think there is need for African Union to intervene. They are still thinking about it. They've not actually carried out the whatever he said he wants them to think about or review. And this is where African Union need to step, to the plate and actually show themselves, talk to Macron, talk to the leaders and ask them how they could do this in a much, organized way in the face where, Africa will have, put in place rapid force and have groups, have soldiers that could go into it. Nigeria used to be a good leader, with ECOMOG, that was doing a great work, at least within the Western Sahel area, and they did a good job, in terms of West Africa. But do they still have that capacity to do that? We know what has happened, to the multinational task force, the force, in that area, in the Far East, with Cameroon and the other country. We know what has become of that. We know what has become of the J5. So I don't think it is a good move. And I'm hoping that some African Union and some African countries will try and speak to Macron, because this is not yet a set policy in terms of what they want to do. But hopefully they'll be able to look at how they could amend it and fill that gap of whatever the French are planning to do.
Yes, I was going to talk about that capacity that you just mentioned. We do know that, the armies of, countries in Africa have been praised for doing good work, fighting insurgency in parts of the continent. But we do know that, the West and also in Europe, countries like France have been offering good support and they have good equipment. And if they could lose men to, forces of Al-Qaeda and ISWAP, and what's the hope of, countries in Africa?
And I think that is the $1 million question, because what we have here is, okay, let's say they are actually going to become technical advisors, which is much safer for him, and then get the African Union or the countries involved to pay for the service that they are rendering, because it looks as if, what is the benefit there for the French people? And we could see the approach, which is more of the approach of the right wing, which is more of let's help our people first. There's living cost that is happening across Europe. There's the issue of gas. We know the Russia-Ukraine invasion or war that is going on. France has its hand in different pots, and they need to think about what is happening back home with the cost of living that is going out of control across Europe. A lot of European governments are not really stable at the moment, and Africa is too far away from home for him to really think about or to actually get himself worried about it. That is why it is now a situation for Africa by Africans. Africans need to step up to the plate, and maybe what the French government might be doing is providing the technical support, and African countries like Nigeria and other countries. Morocco is there. Morocco has done a good job when it comes to counter-terrorism. They are quite good. You could bring in Egypt. You could bring in some other countries, and let's have that joint approach, because what we've not seen is that. And you could see that the same thing with Libya. They came in, they did their mess, they left it, and African Union is not even involved that much in Libya. They're not involved that much. It may be a little bit in Mali, but we need to really start dealing with this, because this is an African problem that needs to be resolved by Africans using African methodology to address it.
Right. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Timothy. Thank you for joining us today on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, that's the UN mission in Mali was informed by the Malian authorities of a coordination meeting to be held between the relevant Malian structures and MINUSMA prior to the planned rotation of contingents. Speaking on the situation in Mali, UN Deputy Spokesperson Farhan Haq says the mission takes note of the communication and stands ready to participate in the discussions without delay.
The UN mission in Mali, MINUSMA, was informed this morning by the Malian authorities of a coordination meeting to be held between the relevant Malian structures and MINUSMA prior to the planned rotation of contingents. The mission takes note of this communication and stands ready to participate in the discussions without delay. The rotation of contingents is crucially important for the mission's operational effectiveness and the safety and security of personnel. All efforts must be made for an urgent settlement, especially since some of the staff concerned should have been relieved several months ago. MINUSMA uniformed personnel are deployed in Mali in support of efforts to promote lasting peace and security in the country.
The Togolese army has expressed its profound regret for mistakenly killing 7 teenagers who it mistook to be jihadists. In a statement, the army chief, Daja Maganawe, said that the group had been killed on Saturday night when they were attacked by an army aircraft on night patrol. Local media reports that all the victims, which were aged between 14 and 18, were on their way home from celebrating the Muslim holiday. The Togolese army has been on high alert following the country's first deadly militant attack in May, when 8 soldiers were killed near the border with Burkina Faso. Several people have died and about 8,000 others have been displaced from their homes in the last 6 months following an upsurge in conflicts in South Sudan's Tambura area located in western Equatoria state. Their green, fertile lands are now abandoned and untilled. We'll get to that story in a moment. Let's check some others. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara held a meeting with his predecessors, Laurent Gbagbo and Henri Konan Bedier, in an effort to reconcile the country. The 3 long-time rivals have monopolized political life in Ivory Coast for over a quarter of a century. This was the trio's first meeting together since a bitter civil war in 2010. On Thursday, President Ouattara welcomed Mr. Gbagbo and Mr. Bedi to a warm reception at the presidential palace, where they held talks for more than an hour. They said they hoped that the meeting would be a sign of the improved political climate in Ivory Coast. The meeting was one of the recommendations of talks between the government and the opposition held earlier this year to calm tensions in the country. President Ouattara expressed optimism that such meetings will become regular so that he can take his predecessors' opinions and recommendations and give them an opportunity to share their experience and their knowledge of the country. African countries have been urged to diversify their exports to better survive economic shocks such as the current global crisis, which are the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. This is one of the key findings of the Economic Development in Africa Report 2022, published by the UN's leading institution dealing with trade and development in Geneva.
The report makes clear the great potential for African countries to transform their economies through services, supporting the continent's long-standing economic diversification goals, boosting productivity and development. In 2020, for the first time in more than 25 years, most of the African countries experienced a recession. This fall in economic activity produced a disproportionate effect on the poorest and most vulnerable segments of the population. This is a continent with huge potential. The African Continental Free Trade Area is a huge opportunity. But to really make good use of that opportunity, countries have to take policies to diversify. They have to go on scale. They have to integrate to be able to more successfully, reap the opportunities and the value added that the international trade can give to the countries.
And back here in Nigeria, Governor Udom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom State in the southern part of the country has promised that a major bridge infrastructure in Mbo local government area of the state will be completed before the end of the year. Governor Emmanuel made the promise during an inspection tour of the project.
Mbo is located in the south part of Nigeria and is a local government area in Akwa Ibom State. This abandoned 1.12-kilometer Etebi-Enwang Bridge is one of the flagship projects of the last administration and is to link oil-rich riverine communities of Mbo with their Esit-Eket neighbors. However, years after it was awarded, work has stagnated at the site. But Governor Udom Emmanuel's administration has reactivated the project, which has major economic importance to the people of Oron ethnic nationality.
We are planning a fabrication yard for oil and gas towards this shoreline. So without access route, that can never be achieved. So today, you've heard him, this is going to be the fourth longest bridge in this country. Yeah. And he has given a commitment for completion by 30th of September. I was even asking him, are you sure? Should I announce? He said, I should announce that 30th of September will complete and will launch this. I think I'll be one of the happiest persons to come by the end of this, or say beginning of the last quarter of this year, to commission this and let the whole world see what we are trying to do here.
The contractor gives details of the project and its completion date.
We have started again in 2018-2019. We came back here, and with His Excellency's kind support and financial involvement and commitment, it will be the fourth longest bridge in Nigeria. It's a total of 1,150 meters long. It comprises 52 spans of 22.5 meters each. And by God's grace, we will complete it on or before the end of September this year.
With the announcement of the September date for the completion of the project, the governor promises that more ongoing projects will be completed before the end of his administration in May 2023.
Chad's interim military government has announced that it will hold a national dialogue starting 20th of August. A decree signed by Prime Minister Albert Fahimi announcing the date was read by government spokesperson Adraman Kulamala on the national broadcaster. The national dialogue is a precursor to elections promised by interim President Mohamed Idris Deby when he seized power following his father's death last year. The military is increasingly coming under domestic and international pressure to return the country to civilian rule. U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee member Bob Menendez has warned that the U.S. will hold to account Mr. Deby and the ruling junta over the transition. A prominent protest movement has called for protests on Saturday to demand the junta give assurances that its members will not stand in elections due in 2023. Well, Tokyo is to be the host of the 2025 World Athletics Championships, beating competition from Kenya, Poland, and Singapore. Announcing the decision, the World Athletics President Sebastian Coe said Tokyo offered a compelling bid among an extremely strong field of candidates. The announcement was made on the eve of the opening of the 2022 championships in the U.S. state of Oregon. Last year, Tokyo hosted the delayed Olympics Games behind closed doors because of the coronavirus pandemic. Nigeria's solar companies are recording a surge in demand for their systems as businesses in Africa's biggest oil producer look for alternatives to power operations after the cost of diesel soared locally due to the rise in global oil prices. Most of the demand is coming from manufacturers, telecoms and agriculture sector, while interest is also coming from the education and health sectors.
Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, with a population of more than 200 million people, has a sclerotic national grid of 4,000 megawatts at peak, leaving businesses and citizens heavily reliant on diesel-powered generators. But with diesel costs rising, especially amid the war in Ukraine, businesses are said to be increasingly abandoning generators for solar. The price of diesel, not subsidized like petrol, has nearly tripled to 800 naira a litre.
We are at the beginning of what is nothing shy but of a power revolution, of turning to more renewables. But what is also important, it will never be only solar. We have to find an intelligent mix between solar and other sources of energy.
This spike in demand is coming especially from manufacturers who in the past would have preferred to run their businesses with diesel-powered generators, but are now trying to cut costs due to skyrocketing diesel costs. In a country where solar penetration is estimated at below 2%, the perception was that solar was not suitable for large-scale use. But that is changing as energy costs eat into company margins, forcing businesses to actively considering solar a clean form of energy.
Next year, the forecast is 48. So we expect to double our installation capacity for this year, next year, and the demand is there, right? So even based on the contracts we have so far, we have enough signed contracts to meet the 24 for this year and even carry over to next year. So right now, it's a game of trying to also manage expectations with customers and let them know, okay, there is a bit of a backlog, but we are trying to see how we can accommodate it. And who knows, maybe that 24 megawatts may end up being 30 this year.
Delivery times for some equipment has risen from 3 months to as long as 9 months, and local financing has also been difficult to tie down as providers continue to rely more on overseas development financial institutions looking to invest in green energy.
We'll bring you our story from South Sudan in subsequent bulletins on Network Africa. Well, that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Rogers.